Welcome everyone to German Tool Reviews. Today we have a showdown of pliers wrenches in the 250mm or 10-inch length range. The pliers wrench has a design similar to your typical water pump pliers, but instead of serrated jaws, it uses a set of parallel smooth jaws used to grip any parallel surface such as the sides of a hex fastener. I'm not going to go into too much detail on how this type of tool actually works, as there are many other reviews out there that do a sufficient job of describing the tool and its features. The easiest way to describe this tool is that it is a replacement for the old adjustable wrench. The main advantages over the adjustable wrench is that you're applying a large amount of positive pressure on the fastener via the handles, which makes slippage nearly impossible. This also allows for a sort of ratcheting action that you would not be able to do with any other tool. So let's take a look at the candidates for the showdown with a short description of each. First up we have the Wiha 32635. This unit is made in Vietnam. It contains a unique quick change mechanism instead of the dedicated button to change the jaw widths. It has a black oxide coating, is only available with the soft vinyl grip style. Then we have the Gedore 183JC. This chrome-plated unit is made in Austria and is only available with the two-component JC handles. It has a bit of a strange push-button design in that you can only engage it with the handles in a certain position, and it takes a bit getting used to. Then we have the Knipex 8601250. This is probably the unit that most people are familiar with since they were the innovator in this category. The unit is made in Germany and is the newer model just released that includes a couple of changes from the previous one. I'm going to base the showdown on the newer model since that is what it looks like they're going to go with in the future. I have a separate video on the differences if you're interested. There's a lot of variation available for this type of unit in terms of surface finish and handle styles. In this particular case I'm using the black oxide finish with the non-slip plastic coated handles. Then we have the Stahlwille 65735-250. This is a German-made Stahlwille branded version of the VBW Power Grip chrome-plated pliers wrench. These actually have a much different design to all the other models, with the moving piece being on the inside of the parallel slides, as opposed to on the outside like all of the other models. Even though there are teeth on both of these slides, the push button actually only engages on one of the two sides. Here's a short breakdown of each of the categories that I'm scoring the units in. The percentages you see here are assigned based on my own personal preferences and may differ from person to person. I'm sure you could just adjust these percentages in any way such that any of the units will score drastically differently, so take everything with a grain of salt. First up we have price with 10%, with lower is better, weight at 5%, where lighter is better, max jaw opening at 20%, where higher is better, the number of positions at 15%, where higher is better. Then I'm going to measure how much slop there is in the lower jaw at 10%. Then we have depth of the jaws at 15%, where higher is better. Max head width at 5%, where lower is better. And then we have a couple of categories that are much more objective with design, workmanship, and quality at 10%, and a review of the adjustment mechanism at 10%. The way I score these categories is I normalize them so that the best performing unit in each category gets a 10, while the others are scored relative to the best performing unit. Now in the price scoring, I'm using the list price of each unit to evaluate this category. For pricing the Knipex, I'm going to use the chrome-plated version in order to better compare it to the other units, which makes it a couple of dollars more than the black oxide version. The lowest priced unit was the Wiha. The Knipex and Gedore units ended up about the same, within a couple of dollars. The Stahlwille, on the other hand, was significantly higher than the others. Again, these are list prices, so you'll probably be able to find these at significant discounts depending on the distributor. Now into weight scoring. Taking the mass of each unit, the Knipex came out as the lightest at 457 grams, with the Stahlwille a very close second at 473 grams. The Wiha and Gedore units were about 100 grams heavier at 577 and 570 grams respectively. For the next two categories, I measured the jaw opening distance for both the fully closed and fully open handle orientation for each of the positions to the nearest half millimeter. I came up with some pretty interesting results. The first being that the delta between the open and closed positions was not consistent on several of the units. In particular, the Wiha and Knipex units started to see the delta drastically decrease in the higher positions. The delta was much more consistent on the Gedore and Stahlwille units over their entire range. I don't really have a good explanation for this, just some guesses that it might have something to do with manufacturing tolerances and the jaws not being perfectly parallel over their entire range. Now into max jaw opening scoring. One thing I sort of have a problem when they advertise these units is that they always give the max jaw opening value with the handles being in the completely wide open position. In this position, the pliers are really almost unusable. Therefore, using a more practical approach, I'm defining the max jaw opening as the distance between the jaws for the last position with the handles being entirely closed. For the Gedore and Knipex units, this ended up being 48 millimeters, followed by the Wiha with 42.5 and the Stahlwille at 39. Now into the number of positions. Sort of a surprise here. The Gedore was actually the winner here with what I counted to be 22 positions. This is followed by 19 for the Knipex, 17 for the Wiha, and 14 for the Stahlwille. Now into lower jaw slop. I did notice there was some play in the lower jaw on all of the units. The Stahlwille had a very consistent amount of play throughout all of its positions, which I believe is more to its different design. The Gedore unit exhibited behavior where there was absolutely no play in nearly all of the positions except for the last few. The Wiha and Knipex units had the behavior of showing very little play in the narrowest positions, but became drastically worse as you got to the wider positions. Measuring how much movement there was in the opening width by moving the lower jaw in the widest position, I came up with a measurement of 1.0 millimeters for the Wiha, 1.4 for the Stahlwille, 1.9 for the Gedore, and 2.0 for the Knipex. Now into jaw depth. I took the jaw depth by measuring from the end of the jaw to the first obstruction on either the top or lower jaw. The deepest one was the Stahlwille at 36.5 millimeters, followed closely behind by the Gedore at 35.5. Knipex came in the middle at 31.5, and the Wiha was well short at 26.5 millimeters. Now in the max head width, another measurement I made was the largest width of the head to determine its suitability for use in restricted places. These were all relatively the same, with values ranging from 13.5 millimeters for the Knipex and 15.2 millimeters for the Wiha. Each of the units did have a unique mechanism for changing the positions of the pliers. The one I have always personally preferred is the Stahlwille because it uses ground surfaces for the button and other rails to ride against when moving the mechanism. That makes things a bit more consistent. It was also easiest by far to dial into a particular size. The Knipex had a very well designed mechanism, but there is quite a bit of static friction when you use it, so it can be hard to move it exactly one position in either direction, as it is very easy to overshoot. The Gedore slid quite well, but had one issue where you could only engage the button when the handles were in a specific position. I suppose this could be a good thing if you're worried about inadvertently pushing the button, but it definitely takes a little bit to get used to. The Wiha definitely had the most undesirable mechanism in my opinion. It uses some sort of quick change mechanism that is engaged when the handles are open to a certain size. There's also a great deal of static friction on the Wiha that makes it quite hard to dial in a certain position. And on a couple occasions, I accidentally moved the position when I didn't intend to. For scoring this category, I gave the Stahlwille a 10, the Knipex a 9, the Gedore an 8, and the Wiha a 5. Now into design, workmanship, and quality scoring. For this category, I took a slightly different approach and started off with giving each unit a 10, and then subtracting a point for each potential issue I saw with the overall big picture design of the pliers. For the Stahlwille, the only thing I didn't like about them was the excessive play in the lower jaw, so I gave it a 9. For the Knipex, the things I didn't like is that the handles felt much further apart than all of the other models, and the amount of sloppiness in that lower jaw at the wider positions. For these two reasons, I gave the Knipex an 8. For the Gedore, the issues I see are the enamel on the button is bound to chip away, as it has already started to do so on my unit, the strange button mechanism, and a potential pinch point on the handles when you're in certain positions. For these three issues, I gave the Gedore a 7. For the Wiha, I found quite a few issues. The first being the almost unusable adjustment mechanism. The second being the surface finish. Even though it is advertised as being a black oxide finish, the way I observed it wearing off seems much more like paint. Third, you can tell by the way that it is wearing on the top jaws that they were not properly deburred after forging, with the edges being higher than the actual surface. And finally, because of how much weight was on the end of this unit, it didn't really feel properly balanced like the other units. For these four reasons, I gave the Wiha a 6. If we total the scores using the previously mentioned criteria, we can now rank the candidates up to 2 significant digits. They actually all scored relatively close, within half a point. This was actually quite an unexpected upset, but first place was the Gedore unit. With a score of 8.08, it came in first in number of positions, tied for max jaw opening, and was second in jaw depth and head width. The downsides of the Gedore unit were some design issues with the adjustment mechanism, and a bit of slop in the widest positions. But I will tell you, when I first got the Gedore, I wasn't really that impressed with it, mostly because of how hard it was to adjust. Once you get past that one issue, it's actually quite a well-designed and well-made unit. A close second was the Knipex unit with a score of 7.98. This was the lightest unit, the second cheapest, and tied for max jaw opening. It is probably the unit that most people will pick up because it is reasonably priced, and you can find it in more places than the other units. It sort of ended up in the middle of the pack when making most of these head-to-head comparisons. In third place with a score of 7.65 of the Wiha. While it was the cheapest unit, I was not a fan of the adjustment mechanism. It also has the shortest jaw depth and was the heaviest out of the lot. Rounding out these units was a Stahlwille with a score of 7.58. While I really like the design and quality of the unit, the things that are really keeping it down are the much higher price, a more limited capacity, and lower position count. But I am becoming more of a fan of VBW pliers, which is what these are. I just wish they weren't priced as high as they are. Again, I don't want to encourage or discourage anyone from buying a particular unit. It is always best to pick up the tool that would best meet your needs. Even though I personally found the Gedore to fit my needs the best out of these four, that may not be the case for everyone. Well, hopefully you enjoyed that showdown of a couple of Pliers wrenches. Check out the link in the description of the four of you. There are also some affiliate links in the description if you feel the urge to pick any of these units up. Have a good week, and I'll catch you guys next time.